Колеги, ми продовжуємо нашу трансляцію, продовжуємо нашу конференцію. Якщо ви маєте змогу, додавайте свої запитання, ми будемо на них відповідати. І я радий представити наступного спікера. Колеги, ми продовжуємо. I'm ready and I'm happy to present our next speaker. Sandra Laflін is a learning scientist and educational futurist, focused on bridging the gap between school and work. As head of learning practice at EPAM system, Sandra coordinates education activities for clients and to work with senior leaders to drive EPAM's concept for hybrid university education systems. Also, Sandra directs the Office of Transformational Learning at the University of Maryland. Sandra, do you
навчання в університеті Мідленд. Чуєте мене, Сандро?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, good morning from Ukraine.
Доброго ранку з України.
Thank you so much for the possibility to join in us. So, you can share your experience, please.
Поділіться своїм досвідом, будь ласка.
You can start.
Можете
So
починати.
thank you guys so much for the opportunity to join you this evening. I'm really excited to talk with you about this particular topic. When Maxime reached out and asked if I had the opportunity to do this, I said, absolutely, this is my favorite topic and something that I've been really concerned about and working in for many years. And that topic is the future of school and work. Next. So as all of you know who are in this session, there is a very significant challenge in the IT sector relating to talent. Globally, there is a significant talent shortage. The global demand, particularly for software engineering, is greatly outpacing the supply, the number of graduates who are going into the field. A second major issue is the skills gap. So even when there are graduates, many of them do not have the appropriate skills, technical or soft skills, to succeed on the job on day one. And then, of course, we have a poor talent indicators. And what this means is that when students are coming out of university, they have tests, often paper and pencil tests, which are not very effective at identifying who is going to be an excellent employee. Because you do well on an exam in college does not mean that you are going to be a top performer on the job. Next. So the reason for the challenges around the gaps between school and work are, I think, largely explained by the current state of higher education. This is obviously, I'm speaking more from a bit of a US perspective, but this analysis holds true for much of the world, as I will explain in a moment. So next, please. So if you look back at photographs from hundreds of years ago, you will find that the way that we teach our college and university students has not changed very much. So, you know, looking back 200 years, 100 years, looking forward to next year, it's truly remarkable how little has changed. And what's also very interesting is that the approach for higher education is very consistent across the globe. This is not a US issue or a Ukraine issue. This is a global challenge. Next. So what do I mean when I say the current state of higher education? Universities are structured with a degree program or a set of courses that everyone needs to take when graduating. Regardless of how much you know coming in, how quickly you are able to pick up new material, your pace of change your curriculum does not change. And that's a problem for students who know a lot or who can move quickly. Another common approach for higher education is having what we call traditional campuses. These are the buildings, the square space in a city or in a small town, and students are expected to leave their homes, leave their jobs, and go into the traditional campus. Of course, what this means is that it limits access very significantly for students, particularly for students who are adults and already working and have families, and it dramatically increased the costs of higher education. A third characteristic of most universities is that traditional students are the primary audience. What this means is universities are primarily designed for people who are 17 to 24, who don't have families, and who are able to devote their full attention to school. This is very challenging for what we call non-traditional students, which are those who are adults, who have families, who don't live near a university, and therefore have a challenge to reskill once they have gone into the workforce. Another typical descriptor for higher education across the globe is the reliance on things that are easy to grade as the mechanisms by which we certify mastery. So there's a reliance on quizzes, on tests, and on paper. But of course, when you go into the workplace, there are very few quizzes and tests or papers. It's really more of a focus on how graduates can perform on the job in complex scenarios. And as a result, this orientation toward things that are easy to grade sets up our graduates to not be successful in the complexity of real work. Another characteristic of higher education is that the curriculum is largely divorced from industry. What do I mean? In typical universities, faculty, professors are not themselves working in the industry. They may have never worked in the industry. And as a result, their orientation is toward things that are foundational, but maybe not current. And so this is a huge challenge for employers, because they'll get new graduates thinking that these students have spent 3 to 5 years, 3 to 6 years in a university. They should be masters of the content in which they have been certified, but they're not. And so billions of dollars every year are spent by companies in reteaching new hires coming from universities what they should have learned in school. Lecture is a big part of the challenge and the structure of higher education. Most faculty teach by talking at people, which is a very effective and efficient way to communicate information, but it is a very formal and structured approach to education. In the workplace, there is a need for employees to constantly be evolving their skills. And if students equate education with lecture, they will miss very important opportunities to develop their skills on the job. And it's really what employers need and will continue to need in the coming years. In certain universities, certainly in the US, definitely in Western Europe and other parts of the world, there is a very significant driver of research that is motivating faculty. In the most exclusive universities, faculty members are hired for their research productivity. They are advanced through their research productivity, and they achieve tenure through research productivity. What this means is that student learning comes a very, very distant second for many faculty behind their research. And this is something that a lot of people don't know, a lot of parents don't know when sending their students to school. They think that universities are designed to be high quality educational institutions, but they're really designed to promote faculty research. And as a result, student learning is not the top priority. I mentioned tenure. This is a very prevalent system within the US and Western Europe and many parts of the world, where faculty, once they have achieved this thing called tenure, usually for their research, then are faculty for life. So they cannot be fired. This is for very good reasons, to protect the ideas and the voice of faculty members, but it also creates a very significant consequence for universities in that they are unable to make significant changes to respond to the market. So I mentioned that the university of 200 years ago is going to be largely the same university of tomorrow. That is in very large part because of the dynamic of tenure and faculty governance. Next. So I said that the university of the past 200 years is going to be the same as tomorrow, but the university of 10 years from now might be very different. And that is because there is unprecedented pressure on the typical higher education model, and it's coming from a variety of sources. Next. Next. So there are tremendous political factors globally that are putting significant pressure on universities to do things differently. There's a trend globally toward protectionism. There's a backlash against immigration. And this means that a lot of the diversity of ideas and students within traditional universities is being lost. In the US in particular, there is because of the way that the university system is set up, there's a heavy reliance on international students, and the current administration in the United States has put a very significant challenge on this, and we're not sure how long that is going to continue. There has been, certainly in the US and in Western Europe, a big focus on we call deregulating the for-profit universities. Traditionally, universities were nonprofit, but in the past couple decades, you've seen a greater growth of universities that are designed to make money. These tend to be online universities. Some of them are high quality, many of them are not, but there is a push toward a more online model for very good reasons, and that is having a significant impact on more traditional universities. In the US, there is a big orientation, and in Western Europe as well, toward changing how universities are accredited, which means changing the definition of the university and allowing the university label to become broader and more inclusive. Next. Of course, there are very significant sociocultural changes. You have, by 2030, there's an expectation that 100% of the globe or close to it will have internet access. That's not the case now. There is a very significant shift in global demographics. There are several countries, we call them the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, that are growing very rapidly in population and investing very heavily in education, particularly in the tech sector. You have many more students. These are the non-traditional students, the parents, those who are already in the workforce, who need to upskill and return to university, not maybe in the traditional sense, but to get new university credentials to help them continue to be effective on their job. And of course, you have alternative credentials, the idea of stackable credentials through places like Coursera and edX and Udacity. These are, and the acceptance of these alternative forms of education is having a significant impact on what people consider school and who can be considered for school. Next. Of course, there is a very significant component of economic evolution as a pressure on universities. In many parts of the country or the world, certainly in the US, you'll see the price of college is rapidly outpacing the growth in income. And as a result, you have increasing government investment in many parts of the world for middle-income countries and high-income countries. Asia is rising as an economic powerhouse in education and in the economy globally. And people are becoming more concerned about the relatively low ROI of the college degree. As I mentioned previously, there's a lot of gaps. There are a lot of inefficiencies in how effective graduates are when they enter the workforce, and that's causing a lot of change and pressure to be applied to higher education. Next. Can we shift the slide? Oh, here we go. Sorry, there's a delay. So the past slide was talking about what I'm sure many of you are aware of, which is the dramatic and a very exciting increase in technology that universities can leverage. Everything from augmented reality to MOOCs to video conference. There's quite a lot that can be done and is being created now that is potentially affecting the universities and how the teaching occurs in the future. However, despite all of these major pressures, most universities are like elephants. I love this quote. They're big, they're slow, they're bureaucratic, and they don't want to change. Next. However, as I'm sure many of you are realizing, and certainly what I do every day, people are looking for ways around traditional higher education, ways to reach students directly and have a very smaller bridge between work and school. Next. So the future of work and school. This is something that has really consumed my research and my thinking and my everyday. And I'd love to share with you my vision and then talk a little bit about the approach that EPAM is taking my company to making this real. Next. So in order to bridge the skills gap and really create the workforce of that the tech sector needs in the future, there are 6 major components that need to be developed 2 of these focus on increasing access and having lots of graduates. The other 4 focus on ensuring that those graduates have the right skills that they need to be effective. So in the lots of graduates space, we have broad access. This means for non-traditional students, for those in the workforce who are parents, it means lowering the cost, making sure that people who can go to the university and can afford to do it. In terms of building skills, there is a very important and kind of critical need to have what we call the agile curriculum. The idea that, especially in technology, the syllabus, the teaching notes from 30 years ago should not be the same as they are today. And in order to help faculty find that the new cadence and reflect the growth of the tech sector, there needs to be a lot of conversation in what should be taught, and that should be an ongoing conversation that changes over time. Effective pedagogy, this means not relying on pure lecture to communicate information and assuming that that works. Instead, a focus on getting students to actually learn things as opposed to endure content and just check the box. Industry projects, real, authentic, complex challenges that require technical skills and soft skills are hugely important. Without real work opportunities in school, graduates are going to struggle to do that real work when they leave school. And that goes hand in hand with the idea of authentic assessments. Instead of relying on quizzes and tests and papers, relying on performance in these complex, multifaceted, real-world tasks, and that using that information to certify who has mastered, who has graduated from university. Next. So every time I talk about this, someone asks, well, what about MOOCs? Are these massive open online courses, are these the secret to the future? And the answer, which you probably guessed from the previous slide, is not really. MOOCs play an important role, but certainly they are not sufficient to create this new system of the future. Next. So a typical, on the right side of the screen, you'll see those 6 components. A typical MOOC, they're one of thousands that are out there, has 2 features. It allows for broad access because it's online and asynchronous, and it reduces cost for the same reasons. However, it doesn't really address the quality components of the university of the future. Next. Even the best MOOCs don't reflect all 6 components that are required for the future. The best MOOCs, and I've built MOOCs for the University of Maryland. I built the first MBA program, the business program, on the edX platform, and even with all the things that we did, it still was not an ideal scenario, because when you're teaching online, you can't really teach effectively because, as I mentioned previously, effective education is not just transmitting information. And the industry projects, we sort of had them, but they're very basic. You can't really do that much in a MOOC context. And for the same reason, the assessments were not authentic. They didn't really reflect the work that needed to be done on the job. Next. So I want to just take a second. I'm a learning scientist. I cannot pass up the opportunity to talk a very little bit about what learning really means. As you can see in this visual, we as a society, certainly in higher education, talk and think about learning as if we're pouring information into someone's head. This obviously, when you think about it, does not make any sense. And instead, I want to kind of tell you what effective learning really looks like. Next. So there are three components to what we call durable, transferable learning. In order to really have learned something, you need to remember it. Very importantly, and where most universities and education organizations fail, is helping students recognize the opportunities to use what they know in situations that they've never seen before, in novel contexts. And then the third component is the motivation to apply it, and the ability to apply it effectively. Next. So what we, all of these components put together suggest that we need a very different kind of university, one that truly and deeply blends industry expertise with the expertise of higher education. So on the industry side, this means realistic problems. It means, identifying what is really essential to know, coaching and mentorship from practicing technologists, feedback, and investment, monetary investment in students. On the other side of the equation, please click, is an emphasis on what universities do well. So taking the information from the industry and turning that into a comprehensive curriculum that blends what's new and important in industry with what are the foundational principles that are universal and consistent. Effective pedagogy. Employers are not so the best teachers. So it's essential that there's a partnership here where higher education, experienced, effective instructors continue to provide that information. Reliable and valid assessments comes from higher education. Information on students and insights about their skills that you can't see necessarily in their grades, that comes from faculty and universities. And then, of course, the structure of the universities comes on that side, but it includes things like stackable credentials, flexible schedules, and reasonable price points. Next. So, as I've alluded to, as you may have heard from some of the other EPAMers at this conference, EPAM is trying to address the challenge of creating that university of the future. And I'll just take a couple minutes to walk you through what that looks like. I'm sure many of you know EPAM. We are a global software and solutions firm going the end-to-end challenge for clients. So starting from conceptualizing the right problems to designing the right solutions for those problems, and then changing how the business overall is structured so that the solutions are adopted and actually solve the problems. I love the mantra, the saying that we have in EPAM, which is that we focus on the future and we make it real. And for the past several years, that emphasis and this solutions-focused approach has included higher education, particularly in Belarus and Ukraine and other CIS countries. Next. So we have the not real name for the university, the shorthand name we're calling New U. But New U is what we envision as the future of work and school. There's a focus on quality, on scale, and on disruption. So the major instructional approach is experiential learning. The curriculum is agile, it's constantly evolving in partnership with industries. Peer learning, social learning is a core component of how we envision students should be learning in the future. Of course, we are leveraging high scale, adaptive online content that's personalized to students, but it's blended with that experiential learning, the real life tasks in small groups, the complex assignments, and real-time in-person interaction that helps students feel connected to their university and learn better. Because of the blend of online content and real life interaction without a traditional campus, we are able to offer a highly effective education for students at a moderate price point. And because it's largely a virtual, not exclusively, but largely a virtual learning experience, it allows much broader access for non-traditional students and those who are geographically distant from the centers of work. What all this means is that we expect this type of model to very much disrupt how traditional universities are working. And we're doing that by eliminating the things that make universities difficult to change. So this means a lot, reliance on physical buildings, an orientation toward research, and a rejection of tenure. Instead, the university will focus around faculty who are practitioner experts. These are people who spend a good part of their careers in working in the industry. Ideally, they would work in the industry as well as teach, so that their skills are constantly evolving. And there's a significant emphasis on coaches and mentors who can guide students and provide them real feedback on their work, and serve as that very important social partner to help students feel connected and engaged at school. Next. What is going to be taught, or what is being taught, I guess, at New U is a combination of technical skills. As you can imagine, we're a software firm. We're very concerned about that. But we also know enough to be as concerned about the soft skills and the growth skills. This is a few of the things that we focus on, but really, because our goal is to develop employees who are effective on their job and able to work in teams and work with clients and think creatively. The focus on growth and soft skills is not an afterthought. It is one of the core things that we emphasize, and we teach a lot of that through these practical, complex, real life challenges that that employees will encounter on the job, and are the best vehicle for teaching how to work together, how to be resilient, and how to learn on your own. Next. As I mentioned, the importance of having a constantly evolving agile curriculum. What this means is that we are sourcing data on the effectiveness, the fit of the curriculum from 3 different sources, from practitioners, from employers, and also from student analytics. And based on the inputs that we're receiving, we are changing the details of what is taught so that student learning evolves along with industry and technology. So, as you can imagine, NUU is very, very different from traditional universities along several different dimensions. Our faculty, our practitioners, they're paired with pedagogy experts, learning scientists, to ensure that the content is most effectively packaged for students. There are learning advisors. These are people who give guidance and support to students as they're going through their program. Instead of relying on proprietary content that is expensive to make and really is quite more of a commodity, we emphasize leveraging free and open source content or licensing content from particular entities that we find to effectively communicate core information. We also have a very exciting proprietary learning platform. As you can imagine, we're a software company that really focuses on crowdsourcing that content, finding opportunities to connect students together all around the world, create virtual learning sessions and small group coaching sessions that are really very significant and important to keep students feeling connected and engaged and moving forward in their academic career. And of course, we are leveraging AI and learner analytics to create profiles of learners to help push the right content to the right students at the right time in the right way, so that their journey is efficient and personalized for them and very effective to help them achieve their employer goals very quickly after graduation. Next. So we are incredibly excited about NUU, not just for the CIRS region, but globally. We are actually launching a component of this next year in the US. There are current activities happening in Ukraine and in Belarus. And so this is something that is going to continue to evolve and grow. I'd love to get your thoughts, your input on NUU, and whether you think it might help address the tech talent crisis.
Колеги, якщо маємо змогу, якщо маємо запитання, ми можемо залишати їх в коментарях до трансляції. Sandra, thank you so much for your time and that you have opportunity to join us. One more time from all of the Ukrainian ecosystem, we wish you all of the best and happy holidays. Be safe and healthful. Thank you so much.